What's going on, guys, and welcome to another Doctor Who classic review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 6th Doctor Colin Baker story, Vengeance on Varos. This is the first Colin Baker story that I've ever reviewed, and it's the first one that I've properly got on disc. I have seen a couple of other stories, however I don't own them. This is the first one that I actually own now, so I thought, you know what, I'd get straight into it and review it. I chose Vengeance on Varos as my first Colin Baker DVD because I heard that this was pretty much his best story. It's debatable, but it's definitely regarded as one of his best, if not his best story, from his pretty short run of only really 11 single stories, if you count Trial of a Time Lord as 4 separate stories. So yeah, I thought I'd get Vengeance on Varos and check it out. I hadn't seen it before, so yeah, let's have a look at the back of the DVD. This is Vengeance on Varos by Philip Martin. The TARDIS is adrift. Deprived of a vital power source, the Doctor and Peri have one last hope, the planet Varos. But Varos is a dangerous place. Trapped in the dreaded Punishment Dome, the Doctor and Peri must fight for their lives and save the starving population from the machinations of the villainous reptilian Sil. So a pretty short but sweet little, I say sweet, not really sweet as in yay or happy, sweet as in kind of terrifying and adventurous, but a little bit of a kind of blurb on the back of the DVD there. And yeah, Vengeance on Varos was definitely an episode I was interested in because I'd heard things about it. I'd heard pretty good things about it. You know, a lot of the Colin Baker era isn't regarded as being too amazing, and although I have seen the 2 Doctors and Revelation of the Daleks before, those are the only 2 other 6th Doctor stories I've seen, and those were quite a while ago, so I couldn't really remember how the 6th Doctor, you know, was as a character. So I was definitely interested to get into this story. So let's start off with the cast. So first of all, we have Colin Baker as the 6th Doctor. Now, I bet you guys are wondering, what do I think of the 6th Doctor? You know, before watching this, I always kind of thought the 6th Doctor wasn't very good. That was everyone's kind of thought of him, and I couldn't really remember the 2 Doctors in Revelation of the Daleks, how he was in that, because it's been quite a few years since I've watched them, so I couldn't really, you know, think of how he was. But you know what? I think Colin Baker's actually pretty good in this story. I don't know if this is just one of his better performances. I don't think it was actually his performance that people didn't like. I think it was just the way the character was written in some stories. But in this story, the 6th Doctor, Colin Baker, he's actually pretty good. Now, there is one thing that's definitely different about this Doctor compared to pretty much every other Doctor, and that is the fact that he's perhaps a little more rude in some ways, and a little more kind of, I don't know, less forgiving, and, you know, just, I don't know, like there's one moment where he's like telling these guys to go away, and he just kind of pushes them around and says, go away, get out of here. So he's a bit more kind of assertive, I suppose, than some other Doctors. But you know what, I think he has his funny moments. He has some pretty funny moments in this one, and I actually don't mind Colin Baker as the 6th Doctor. I don't really like the outfit. I think the outfit is a bit too crazy and a bit too out there. But you know what, Colin Baker as the 6th Doctor in this one, I give him a big thumbs up. Then we've got Nicola Bryant as Peri Brown. I mentioned this in my Kaiser Androzani review, just a couple of reviews ago actually. I don't really like Peri. I don't really like her. I mean, Nicola Bryant's a British actress, but she's playing an American character, and the accent doesn't really do it for me. It comes off as a bit annoying, to be honest. I'm not a massive fan of, you know, the strong American accents as it is, and then when it's, you know, a British actress doing a American accent, it does come off as a little bit annoying sometimes, a bit too twangy. But you know, Peri's, yeah, she's just not really the sort of companion that really interests me. We've got a couple of guest casts that I will talk about. First of all, Nabil Shaban as Sil. He's like the big slug creature thing, which I'll get onto later. I mean, he's a bit over the top, but I think that's kind of what the character was going for. It is a very over the top, kind of ridiculous, shouty character. Not my favourite character, but I mean, he does a good job in what he does. And then the only other one I'm really going to talk about is Martin Jarvis as the Governor. I think he does a pretty good job at that role with that one. So we'll now go on to the good and the bad, starting off with the good. A world where people being punished is turned into entertainment is really interesting. Yeah, I really like this. I know that in the new series with the 9th Doctor in Series 1, kind of Bad Wolf was kind of a take on this in a way, you know, people viewing shows where people are being punished and killed and stuff. So it's really the same sort of thing, but this is where it all began with Vengeance on Varos. And you know what? It's done really well in this. I just like the fact that we've got this whole thing where it's all about people watching TV, watching these shows where people are tortured and punished and killed, and it's just, you have the whole voting thing as well, which I think is really interesting. A little bit of politics in here as well, which is, I'm not the biggest fan of politics, but it kind of works in this one. It's not kind of pushed down your throat too much, and yeah, I just think that's a really, really cool concept. Some very good direction in this one. I like the bits where, where there's like the chase scenes and the fight scenes, really well directed, good camera angles and stuff. Also some pretty good music in this one. Some, you've got your kind of normal sort of music you get in classic Doctor Who, but then you have the odd, kind of different, quirky and, just really nice music, and it works really well. Throughout the story we see two people watching TV, so it's like they're also watching this as a show with us. Yeah, it's really interesting. We have these two people, I imagine they're husband and wife, it's not really clarified, but I'm fairly sure they are, and they're watching the show, and when we see that guy at the start being tortured, it kind of cuts to them watching what we're watching. It's just like a really cool little thing. We keep going back to these people now and again when the Doctor and Perry and all that are being chased through the punishment dome, through all the corridors and stuff. We see them, it cuts to them watching that as well, and I think it's just a really nice thing to cut back to. It really adds to the story. Like I just briefly said then, the chase scenes in the corridors were really cool. You've got the ones at the start where the Doctor, Perry and that man and woman are running through the corridors being chased by the guards. Then you've got one later on where they're in the car, which I will get to. Actually, no, I'll mention that now. When the Doctor and Perry are, driving around in the car. I love the Doctor driving around in that little patrol car. It's such a such a funny little moment, and you know what? With Colin Baker's kind of quirky, weird Doctor with his clothes and all that, it works really, really well. I found that really funny, and yeah, just some really, really good chase scenes. The guards falling into the acid bath. At first I was thinking, oh, what's going on here? Is this going to be a moment where Colin Baker's Doctor is too dark and a bit too ruthless? But you know what, he didn't actually try and push people into the acid bath. That first guy just kind of fell in, and then the second guy who he was pushing towards the bath, but I don't think he was actually trying to push him into it, he got dragged in by the other guy. And when that guy came out of the acid bath to drag the other guy in, he looked really, really mangled and burnt. He's been in the acid. He actually looked pretty gruesome, and for a PG story, you know what, that's pretty brave of you, Doctor Who, BBC. But yeah, that was a pretty cool moment there. Perry and Areta being mutated. Yeah, there's a short bit in the story where Perry and Areta, which is the girl who's with that other guy, I can't remember his name now. I think is it Arak? Is it him? I'm not 100% sure. They put into this kind of mutation thingy-majiggy, and Perry gets turned into this kind of like bird-like creature. Areta gets changed into something else, I can't really remember, but that's a really, really cool moment. It's over pretty quick. I mean, on the cover of the DVD we have Perry kind of in the bird state, but we never actually see her get up and move around. She's just kind of laid down almost asleep pretty much throughout that whole process, and then within a couple of minutes she gets turned back to normal again because the process doesn't get completed. So it is over pretty quickly, which is a bit, it would have been nice to see her like kind of moving around and doing some stuff as this weird bird-like creature, but sadly we only get to see her for a couple of minutes like that. However, it is a pretty cool scene, and you know what, the makeup on that, it's not amazing, but it's not terrible. There's some very nice sets, from the corridors to the control room and the jungle room. Yeah, some really nice sets. I mean, the corridors are kind of your standard sort of base under siege sort of space corridor sort of setup. They're pretty basic, but you know what, they do the job, they look cool. The control room's also a pretty basic sort of control room, but I like having all the screens up there and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got, the chair where the governor sits when the voting takes place. That's pretty cool as well. And then you've got the jungly area, which is towards the end of part 2, where, that's basically just the corridors again, really, but with some kind of jungleness, some like vines and leaves and stuff hanging from the roofs. I think that's a pretty cool set as well. So altogether, the sets are pretty decent in this one. And then finally, the viewers don't know what to do after the torture programs are stopped. Yeah, so those two people that I told you about that we keep kind of cutting back to now and again throughout the 2 episodes, at the end, it kind of ends on them being like, well, what are we going to do now? Because, previously they just keep on watching watching these shows, and they have to keep voting, because if they don't vote they get punished. So they kind of have to just, all their lives they're just watching these shows all the time, you know, so that they can vote, so they can, you know, watch all these things. And when the torture programs are stopped off by the governor, it's like, what are they going to do now? You know, they've been doing this all their lives. What are they going to do now? They have nothing to do. So I thought that was quite an interesting kind of perspective on, you know, what TV does to people. And, you know, like, you know, people get invested in it, and when it gets taken away from them, they kind of feel like, what the hell are we going to do now? I thought that was a really, really cool little message at the end. There's only really one bad thing I wanted to talk about this story, and that is the slug thing called Sil looks and sounds ridiculous and is annoying as hell. Now, I think Sil was supposed to be a bit silly. I mean, just looking at it, it's supposed to be a bit silly, but I think the performance is a bit too over the top. I'm guessing that he was probably told to do it quite over the top, but for me it's a bit too over the top, and the whole kind of like thing that he does, you'll understand if you've seen the episode, and the way he like waves around his arms, it's a bit, it is a bit silly. You can't take Sil seriously at all, and he does get on my nerves. He yells way too much. He's just a bit too silly. He just kind of, it's just kind of like, okay, this, you know, if this villain, I don't mind a silly villain, but if this one was a little bit more, you know, serious, then then it would make more sense. But it's just so silly in the way he wafts his arms around, the way he talks, the way he looks around the room, the way he looks. Just everything about Sil kind of annoys me and makes it a little bit too ridiculous for my liking. So that's the only real bad thing I had to say about Vengeance on Varos. I actually really enjoyed this one. If I was going to give it a rating, I think I'd give it a 9 out of 10, you know. I really, really enjoyed this story. If it wasn't for Sil being a bit too ridiculous and silly, this may get a 10 out of 10. I'm not 100% sure, but, you know, I have a feeling this is probably going to be the best we're going to get with the Colin Baker era. Obviously, I'm not sure yet. I've only ever seen the Two Doctors and Revelation of the Daleks after this. So, you know, maybe there's other stories out there, but from what I can gather, the rest of the stories in the Colin Baker era aren't anything to rave about. I'm interested to definitely see more of them, but I think Vengeance on Varos is pretty much the best we're going to get, so a 9 out of 10. But anyway, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.